Mexico's most wanted drug dealer, El Mencho, killed in military operation as violent clashes erupt across the country. Before the guns and bullets started flying, the Mexican army watched him spend the last 24 hours of his life with his secret lover in a vacation house. Hours later, things took a horrifying turn. In this video, I'll share all the dark details of Elno's last day alive and the raid that led to his death. The last 24 hours. For years, Ignacio Rubeno Siguera Cervantes ran the Jalisco New Generation cartel from the mountains of western Mexico. He had a $15 million bounty on his head from the DEA. He had survived at least 6 operations designed to capture or kill him. He suffered from kidney failure and relied on private medical facilities in Jalisco. His son was in a U.S. prison, serving a life sentence with a $6 billion forfeit order. Or his wife had been arrested twice for money laundering and released in January 2025 under surveillance. His brother had been extradited to the United States. His son-in-law had been arrested in California. One by one, the people around him had been removed. By February 2026, his circle had shrunk to a handful of ex-military bodyguards and one woman. On February 20th, 2026, a trusted associate escorted one of Elno's romantic partners to a vacation rental compound on the outskirts of Tapalpa, in a mountain town of about 20,000 people in southern Jalisco. Intelligence agencies, both Mexican and American, had been watching this associate. The woman arrived at the cabin. She met Elmino. The next day, February 21st, she left the compound, but Elno stayed. That was the confirmation authorities needed. And what we do know is that U.S. intelligence was involved. U.S. intelligence provided what officials called a target package, likely sourced from drones, signals, intercepts, and informants that pinpointed Elno's location inside the compound. The Joint Interagency Task Force Counter Cartel, JIATFCC, a U.S.-led initiative launched in January 2026, relayed this to Mexican authorities. Mexico's National Intelligence Center confirmed it. The raid was authorized. On the night of February 21st and into the early morning hours of February 22nd, Mexican Army Special Forces, the National Guard's Special Immediate Reaction Force, the Air Force, SAR, and agents from the Attorney General's office converged on Tapalpa. Residents in the area reported unusual military activity overnight: convoys, overflights, movement in the hills. Before dawn on February 22nd, the breach began. Ground troops and 6 helicopters encircled the cabin. Elno's bodyguards opened fire. They had high-caliber weapons and rocket launchers, one of which damaged a military helicopter. The firefight lasted through the early morning. 4 cartel members were killed on site, or 2 more were arrested. 3 Mexican troops were injured. During the chaos, Elno fled into the forest with 2 guards. He was pursued, wounded by gunfire, and captured alive. He was loaded onto a military helicopter for transport to Mexico City. He died en route from his injuries. At the scene, authorities seized armored vehicles, 7 long weapons, and 2 rocket launchers, 80% of which were traced to U.S. origins. 3 more cartel members died from injuries during transit from the site. In total, 6 to 8 CJNG fighters died in connection with the operation. 1 National Guard member was killed separately in Tapalpa during related attacks. Today, Mexico says it has killed Elmino. The backlash was immediate. By mid-morning on February 22nd, news of Elno's death had leaked. Within hours, Mexico was burning. U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau said officials were watching with great sadness. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt called it a major victory against fentanyl. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum urged calm and emphasized coordination between federal and state forces. Defense Secretary Ricardo Travia declared that the military had accomplished their mission and showed the strength of the Mexican state. By February 23rd, Elno's body was genetically identified by the Attorney General's office and slated for release to his family. El Mencho, born in 1966 in Michoacan, a former police officer, a man deported from the United States 3 times, the founder of a cartel that controlled 30 to 35% of Mexican territory and trafficked enough fentanyl to contribute to over 100,000 annual overdose deaths in the U.S., was dead at 59 years old. And the woman who had visited him 2 days before was now the most talked about figure in Mexico, the secret lover. Yet the intelligence breakthrough that led to El Mencho's death did not come from an intercepted phone call or a turned lieutenant. It came from watching a woman walk into a cabin. Mexican Defense Secretary Ricardo Travia laid out the sequence during a press briefing on February 20th. A trusted associate had escorted one of Elno's romantic partners to a private cabin complex in Tapalpa. The woman met Elno. She departed the following day, but intelligence bolstered by what U.S. officials described as very important additional information confirmed he had remained behind with his security detail. That confirmation sealed the timeline for the February 22nd raid. Yes, that is actually a very common strategy. It happened with El Chapo, and it has happened with other leaders that they usually try to go through the romantic partners to locate them. The woman at the center of this chain of events is believed to be Guadalupe Moreno Correo. in a figure who had first surfaced in leaked military documents from the 2022 Guacamaya Leaks hacking incident. Described as being in her early 50s, light-skinned with dark hair, Moreno Carrillo had maintained an extraordinarily low profile. No children from the relationship, no direct involvement in cartel operations, and no public footprint that would attract attention. Intelligence reports from the Guacamaya Leaks portrayed her as part of Elno's inner circle, but not an operational figure. A stark contrast to Elno's ex-wife, Rosalinda Gonzalez Valencia, who had been a hands-on participant in money laundering and cartel logistics for decades. Elmeno's marriage to Rosalinda had been foundational to his empire. They married in 1996, and the union forged a critical alliance between Elmeno's emerging faction and the powerful Valencia family, which controlled drug production networks and the financial arm known as Las Queens. Rosalinda, nicknamed La AA, meaning the boss, handled finances and logistics, until her arrests in 2018 and 2021 for money laundering. They had 3 children, all of whom became entangled in cartel affairs. Ruben El Manito, now serving life in a U.S. prison. Jessica Johanna, who received a 30-month U.S. sentence for dealings with sanctioned entities. And Leisha Michelle, sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury in 2022 for aiding CJNG finances. The couple separated around 2018 amid the cascading pressure of family arrests and Rosalinda's legal troubles. It was after this split, with his wife behind bars, his son extradited, and his inner circle disintegrating, that Elmeno reportedly began his relationship with Guadalupe Moreno Carrillo. By the time of his death, she represented one of the last remaining personal connections in his shrinking world. Mexican authorities have been careful to frame what happened as intelligence work, yet not betrayal. Officials have not publicly confirmed Moreno Carrillo's identity, citing safety concerns. No bounty claims have been filed. No arrests of the woman have been reported. The prevailing account from investigators is that her movements were tracked inadvertently through surveillance of the associate who escorted her, meaning she did not knowingly betray Eleno. She simply visited him, and that visit was observed. But the internet had already written a different story. Within hours of Elmeno's death, social media erupted with claims that an OnlyFans influencer named Maria Ulisa, who boasts 3.5 million Instagram followers, was the lover, who had deliberately leaked his location for the $15 million bounty. Viral posts showed photographs allegedly depicting Julissa alongside Elmeno. The narrative was explosive. A glamorous social media star had seduced one of the world's most wanted men and sold him out for millions. There was one problem. The photos were AI-generated fakes. Julissa vehemently denied any connection to Elno, calling the rumors false and unfounded. She reported receiving death threats, including a CJNG-signed banner, accusing her of betrayal over an unrelated dispute involving a stolen truck. The misidentification had put a real person's life in danger. Experts noted that such rumor campaigns can stem from cartel disinformation designed to SEO distrust or divert attention from internal fractures. The betrayal narrative persisted despite the evidence. Unverified claims circulated on X that Elmeno's girlfriend had taken the $15 million bounty and betrayed him. Other posts went further, claiming that CJNG had placed a $1.5 million bounty on the woman and that her own brother had turned her in. None of this was verified by any official source. What remained beneath the noise was something far less cinematic, but far more consequential. A man whose empire had been systematically dismantled until his most private vulnerability. A quiet visit from a companion became the gap that intelligence agencies had been waiting years to exploit. As one analyst wrote, "This case highlights how fragile even the most powerful figures can be when personal relationships intersect with high-stakes worlds." The retaliation rampage. The Jalisco New Generation cartel had always planned for this. Our contingency protocols for Elmeno's capture or death had been drilled into the organization's regional commanders for years. And when news of the Tapal parade leaked on the morning of February 22, 2026, those protocols activated with terrifying speed and coordination, plunging at least 20 Mexican states into simultaneous chaos. The retaliation began within hours. CJNG operatives hijacked buses, trucks, and cars across major highways and city streets, set them ablaze, and used them as flaming barricades, a tactic known as narco-blockades. The scale was staggering. Over 250 blockades materialized across the country, with 65 in Jalisco alone, turning Guadalajara into what witnesses described as a ghost town. Spikes and nails were scattered across roads to shred tires. Plumes of acrid black smoke rose over Puerto Vallarta's beachfront neighborhoods as burning vehicles choked access to the airport. The blockades were a smokescreen for something far deadlier. In 6 separate ambushes across Jalisco, CJNG gunmen attacked National Guard convoys, killing 25 members, including a captain hit by a car bomb. A state prosecutor was assassinated in Guadalajara. Arson attacks ripped through the commercial landscape. More than 200 OXXO convenience stores were torched along with 50 bank coaster branches, gas stations, pharmacies, and a Costco in Puerto Vallarta. In Guanajuato, 55 separate incidents across 23 municipalities included 60 arson and led to 18 arrests. Michoacan saw clashes in 13 municipalities with 4 cartel members killed. In Puerto Vallarta, a prison riot erupted at a low-security facility, killing 1 jail guard and allowing 23 inmates to escape. Explosions echoed through urban neighborhoods. Gunfire rattled through streets that had hours earlier been filled with tourists enjoying Mexico's Pacific coast. The man believed to have coordinated much of this carnage was Hugo Cesar Macia Sereni, known as El Tuli Eleno's right-hand lieutenant. He reportedly offered bounties of makes $20,000 per soldier killed to incentivize attacks on security forces. His reign of coordinated vengeance was brief. El Tuli was killed in a shootout with Mexican forces in Elgo, Jalisco on February 23rd, shattering the centralized command structure behind the retaliation. The human toll was devastating. At least 25 to 27 National Guard members and security personnel were killed. Between 30 and 42 cartel members died in clashes across the country. 1 to 2 civilians were killed, including a pregnant woman caught in a shootout. Over 70 suspected cartel members were arrested. The total death count from the raid and its aftermath reached between 62 and 73 people. Jalisco Governor Pablo Lemus Navarro declared a code red state of emergency, advising 8 million residents to shelter indoors. Schools across the state closed on February 23rd. Public transportation was suspended. More than 1,000 people were stranded overnight at Guadalajara Zoo after being unable to leave. Airlines, including Air Canada, Delta, United, Southwest, and Alaska, canceled dozens of flights to Guadalajara and Puerto Vallarta. Taxi and rideshare services halted. Cruise ships were rerouted. The U.S. Embassy issued shelter-in-place alerts for Americans across 15 states and activated a 24/7 hotline that fielded hundreds of calls from stranded citizens. Scene cartel propaganda amplified the terror far beyond the physical violence. CJNG's Delta faction circulated an unverified leaked message threatening to storm hotels, houses, and target civilians unless El Mencho's killers were surrendered, with a chilling caveat: only children would be spared. Meanwhile, between 200 and 500 AI-generated false posts flooded social media, including fabricated videos of airport sieges and false claims that President Sheinbaum was hiding on a ship. A resurfaced 2016 audio recording of El Mencho threatening police officers circulated widely, his voice commanding, "Tell your sons of Beges to fall back," serving as a ghostly reminder of the fear he once wielded personally. By February 23rd, the Mexican military had deployed over 2,000 additional troops, and 90% of blockades had been cleared. Highways reopened, flights resumed, and uneasy quiet settled across the country. The 48-hour rampage was over. But for the families of the dead, and for the 4 professional soccer games postponed, for the tourists who had witnessed what one visitor called a war zone, and for the 2026 World Cup organizers now scrambling to reassess security in host city Guadalajara, the aftershocks were only beginning. Conspiracies, cover-ups, and the man who escaped 6 times. Within days of El Mencho's confirmed death, the internet fractured into warring camps of believers and skeptics, each armed with theories that ranged from the plausible to the fantastical. And the skeptics had a powerful tool on their side. El Mencho had cheated death so many times before that doubting this time felt to many like common sense. The most persistent conspiracy theory was the simplest. El Mencho faked his death. Some people even think that it's not even him. I mean, there's such little trust, I think, in the government. Proponents pointed to a glaring absence. No body photographs, no DNA results released to the public. Nothing resembling the grim post-mortem images that had accompanied the deaths of other cartel leaders like Arturo Beltran Leyva. On X, users claimed El Mencho was alive in New York, or that the entire operation had been staged to allow his US-born stepson to assume control of the CJNG. Reddit threads in R-Narcos seethed with suspicion, with users arguing that the daytime timing of the raid was itself suspicious. Why not strike at midnight for maximum surprise? Some even cited the numerological coincidence that El Mencho died on the anniversary of El Chapo's arrest as evidence of choreography. Counter-arguments from analysts, however, were compelling. The sheer scale of CJNG's retaliation, 250-plus blockades, dozens of dead soldiers, strongly indicated a genuine leadership loss, not a scripted exit. A second theory alleged that El Mencho had been captured alive but deliberately killed during transport to prevent him from talking. Under this narrative, Mexican authorities, or perhaps even U.S. agents, silenced him to protect corrupt officials whose names would have surfaced during an extradition trial. Some ex-users went further, claiming a U.S. agent had physically strangled him mid-flight. Mexico's defense ministry maintained he succumbed to gunshot wounds sustained during the firefight, and no credible evidence of post-capture execution has emerged. Analysts from the International Crisis Group countered that Mexico's preference to avoid extradition spectacles made the scenario tactically logical, but not conspiratorial. The third major theory inflated U.S. involvement beyond admitted intelligence support into direct operational control, essentially accusing Mexico of serving as a proxy for an American operation designed to address the fentanyl crisis under Trump administration pressure. While both governments confirmed U.S. intelligence sharing through JATFCC, they denied any physical American participation. Brookings analyst Vanderfelbab Brown characterized the operation as a demonstration of cooperation diplomatically motivated, certainly but executed by Mexican forces. For a further out on the conspiracy spectrum, QAnon-adjacent threads on X and Reddit promoted claims of a client as laptops supposedly recovered from the compound, allegedly containing names of elite figures linked to child trafficking and organ harvesting. These claims borrowed language and structure from era conspiracy tropes and were debunked as recycled misinformation with no evidentiary basis. What made the skepticism so potent was El Mencho's own extraordinary track record of survival. He had slipped through the fingers of Mexican authorities at least 6 documented times over the previous decade. In August 2012, federal police acted on a U.S. tip in Tenaya, Jalisco. A shootout killed 6 CJNG gunmen, but Eleno escaped under the cover of 37 vehicle blockades that paralyzed Guadalajara's highways. In March 2015, a devastating sequence of ambushes unfolded to protect him. A police convoy was hit in Ocotlan, killing 5 officers, 3 civilians, and 3 gunmen. A shootout in Zacalco de Torres killed a key associate, and in San Sebastian del Oeste, CJNG blocked roads and ambushed state police, killing 15 officers. The bloodshed was a perimeter defense, Eleno at its center, untouched. The most dramatic escape came in May 2015 during Operation Jalisco in Vaporizon. A massive federal deployment targeted his position. As forces closed in, CJNG fighters downed a Mexican Army helicopter with a rocket-propelled grenade, killing 9 soldiers. The cartel simultaneously launched 39 blockades across Guadalajara and surrounding areas, burning buses, banks, and gas stations in 20 towns and 3 states. It was a textbook insurgent response, overwhelming diversionary chaos to cover one man's escape, and it worked. A 2022 operation prompted similar widespread disruption, and once again, he vanished into the mountains. The pattern was always the same. Intelligence would locate him, forces would close in, CJNG would ignite the surrounding region, and Eleno would disappear. His survival was so consistent that it bordered on mythological in the narco underworld, which is precisely why, when the 7th attempt finally succeeded, so many refused to believe it. The power vacuum. Eleno built the Jalisco New Generation cartel with no succession plan. He operated as its unquestioned apex, strategist, enforcer, final arbiter. And when he died on that helicopter, the organization he had grown into, a 20 billion criminal empire spanning over 40 countries, was left without a designated heir. His son, the obvious candidate, was locked in a U.S. federal prison. His wife was under surveillance, and the men who ran his regional operations, his plaza bosses, his enforcers, his financial operators were now looking at each other across a table with no one at the head. What happens when the head of a cartel is gone, but the cartel isn't? And analysts have identified 5 primary contenders for control of the CJNG, each representing a different pillar of the organization's sprawling infrastructure. The first and most widely discussed is Juan Carlos Valencia Gonzalez, known as L03 or El Pelon, El Meno's stepson. Born in Santa Ana, California, holding dual U.S.-Mexican citizenship, Valencia Gonzalez served as de facto second-in-command, running the Grupo Elite armed wing and overseeing operations across multiple states. His criminal record stretches back to 2007, encompassing organized violence, including ambushes and enforcement killings. He was indicted in 2020 in the District of Columbia for drug conspiracy and firearm use, with a $5 million U.S. reward on his head. His American birth gives him a unique operational advantage for cross-border logistics, but it also makes him a prime extradition target. The second contender is Audius Flores Silva, alias El Cardenero, and Mata Jefes, meaning boss killer, a regional commander controlling vast territories along Mexico's Pacific coast. Nayarit, Zacatecas, Guerrero, Flores Silva manages clandestine methamphetamine laboratories and airlift strips. He orchestrated the 2015 police ambush in Soyatlan, Jalisco, and has commanded operatives involved in attacks on civilians, law enforcement, and rival cartels alike. Previously convicted in the U.S. in 2002 for narcotics trafficking and having served 5 years, he was arrested again in Mexico in 2016. Yes, but released. He carries a $5 million U.S. reward board and is valued for his alliance brokering abilities, including rumored connections to Sinaloa's Chapitos faction. Third is Ricardo Ruiz Velasco, El Duar, the senior lieutenant who leads the group of Elites paramilitary enforcers while managing propaganda and urban operations in Jalisco and Michoacan. His violent record is particularly disturbing. He is implicated in the 2012 murder of Venezuelan model Daisy Ferrer Arenas, on the 2013 killing of a government official, and the 2025 femicide of TikTok influencer Valeria Marquez. He faces U.S. Treasury sanctions for trafficking and violence. His control of Guadalajara's urban territory could provide a base for consolidation, but his notoriety and brutality may alienate potential allies. Fourth is Gonzalo Mendoza Gaitan, El Sapo, the plaza boss for Puerto Vallarta, who coordinates Chinese precursor chemical imports and oversees forced recruitment operations. Mendoza Gaitan managed the notorious Isizagir Ranch in Tuchitlan, Jalisco, where skeletal remains and hundreds of personal items pointed to forced recruitment, torture, and massy killings. He faces OFAC sanctions, and his subordinates have been linked to assassination attempts, including the 2020 attack on Mexico City's security chief. Reports describe him as a man with a hair-trigger temper who breeds tigers at his compound, a figure sources say is too violent even by cartel standards to hold unified command. Fifth is Julio Alberto Castillo Rodriguez, El Churro, El Meno's son-in-law, married to daughter Jessica Johanna, who serves as the cartel's financial operator, controlling forces in Colma, and critically overseeing Manzano port operations for precursor chemical imports. He has led hitman groups and been involved in RPG attacks on helicopters, arrested in 2015 and 2016 for weapons and organized crime. He was released on technicalities both times. He faces OFAC sanctions for money laundering and trafficking. What happens next depends on which of these five or which coalition of them manages to consolidate power before the organization splinters. And then whoever steps up, he has to assert power. That is how it works in gangs. That's how it works in cartels. Chris Dalby of Diami Security Intelligence compared Eleno's removal to firing a CEO. The business endures, or emphasizing the cartel's decentralized franchise model. But former DEA official Robert W. Patterson noted that the turbulence can materially enhance the investigative process as defections, mistakes, and internal leaks multiply during transitions. History offers sobering precedent. When El Chapo was captured in 2016, Elmo arrested in 2024, the Sinaloa cartel fractured into Waring Mayos and Chapitos factions, with clashes surging from 173 in 2013 to 3,732 in 2021. When the Zetas lost their leaders in 2012, the organization atomized into smaller, more unpredictable violent groups, and the parallel closest to El Meno's own death, Arturo Beltran Leyva in 2009, tracked to a hideout after a lavish party with prostitutes and killed in a 90-minute Marine raid in Cuavaca, saw his cartel collapse into irrelevance within years. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.